Today, this is a panel discussion. So the remarkable Resli is going to facilitate our panel, and I'm going to let her do the introductions and discuss how that works. And then we've got just under an hour at this stage. And then when we're done, I will wrap up and remind you to do the feedback because that's really important. So over to you, Resli. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome to our panel. Our objective is for us to all learn from each other. And this is part of the Women in Technology stream, but everyone is welcome. It's not about bashing anybody or playing victim or any of that. It's just about us learning. And in part of that, acknowledging that things can be different for women in IT. So we have a marvelous panel of experienced women, and I'm going to ask each to just give a brief introduction so you know who's here. So whoever wants to start, fire and fall back.
Okay.
Michelle.
Okay, hi. I'm Michelle Harris and I work for Macro 4. I've been doing this, as Resli says, we're quite seasoned. I'm certainly seasoned. I've been in IT for longer than I care to remember, and with Macro 4 for quite a long time. From a Macro 4 perspective, I manage the mainframe R&D and also customer services for EMEA. So that keeps me quite busy. I started off in support, having worked in Germany and Switzerland, and joined a team of exclusively men at that time, which has changed a bit over the years, but we're still majority men.
Okay. Thank you. How about Mary? You look like you were trying to get in there.
Well, no, I was just going to jump in there. So I'm Mary Lean. I work in the mainframe security team in AIB in Dublin. I've been on that team now for the last 5 years. Prior to that, I did start in the IT industry back in 1987, and I worked for approximately 17 years before I decided to take a lengthy career break, or 14 years. So I feel like I'm just back in the IT world now, having given up the school runs for the commute pre-COVID and then the working from home. So the experience has been different, very different, the second time around than it was initially back in the day when I was in my 20s and 30s. But good to be on the panel and good to be part of this fabulous group of women in IT.
Thank you. But Wendy, Kira?
Hi, I'm Wendy Wilson, and I've worked in IT for quite a long time too. So actually, when I was putting it down, I said 4 decades, and I was like, oh, that's a long time. Yes. So I started off as a trainee. I never wanted to go into IT. I got into IT by chance, and I absolutely love it. And I've managed to, like many of the other guys here, managed to hold down a full-time job, being really successful, getting to the top of my game in the technical area, which I wanted to do rather than management. But at the same time, I've had 3 kids, worked full-time, but juggled, a lot of juggling, but it worked. So ask me anything.
Thank you. And Kira.
Hi, Kira O'Connor. I think I know most of you already. I've been doing this for a very long time. I started off wanting to be an accountant, and I very, very nearly did. I had a job offer and everything else, and then AIB offered me a job being a technical person, and I have never looked back since. Did about 18, 19 years as a systems programmer, and I've been doing security ever since, and I love it.
Fantastic. Thank you all.
Yeah. And I should probably say, and I work for Vitali because we're only a new company.
Okay. And for the people who are not the speakers on the panel, but the attendees of the panel, you are very welcome to ask questions. As Wendy said, ask me anything. To do that, you can raise your hand using the icons at the bottom of your screen, or you can pop a question into the chat. And if someone has a hand raised or there's a question in chat that I haven't spotted, Aileen's going to make sure to give me a virtual tap on the shoulder and make sure I know about it. And if your question is for a specific panelist, if you're thinking, oh, yeah, I really want Michelle's take on this, then if you could put that in as well, you're very welcome to. And we'll go to about 4:30. So ready to roll?
Yay.
Okay. If anybody has a question, go ahead and throw it into the chat. And I thought, we've got somebody in the waiting room, Aileen.
Yeah, I'm on it.
When we spoke yesterday, the panelists and I, we all got together, and Michelle told the sandwich story, which I thought was so interesting. Michelle, could you could you tell us the sandwich story?
Yeah, it's something that amuses me on a monthly basis. We have a management meeting, and we have a lunch that gets served afterwards. Well, served. It's just sandwiches and stuff. So they've been stored in the fridge waiting for us to finish our meeting, which always overruns, and we all come out. But what makes me smile every time is that it's the women who open the sandwiches, take all the cellophane off, and the men just stand back. And it's just something that obviously it's part of us that we want to do this sandwich thing. And the men just doesn't even encounter their heads, just doesn't come into them at all, which just, yeah. And I've tried to say to some of them, you could do this too. And sometimes they say, oh, let me help you. And you think as if, it just makes me laugh.
Wow. And who clears up afterwards?
Well, we have other people who get the leftovers, so they kind of end up having to clear up. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's less obvious then.
What do you plural? What do you think might be going on there? Why are women choosing to unwrap the sandwiches, and why are men choosing to hold back?
I don't think they intend, like I said, I don't think they intend to do it. They're not doing it with any sort of malicious thought at all. It just doesn't.
You mean the men?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they mean anything at all. It must be something to do with almost pre-programming that happens, I suspect, when we're young.
Yeah, I wonder who else has similar experiences, or
Niall's got a good one.
anybody out there. Oh, no, we've got a comment and a hand up. Okay, hang on, I'm coming to you. Niall's saying, I noticed this exact situation at a wake recently. And Niall, being a man, said, I and my male friends were scared of seeming greedy.
Oh,
Niall, can we let Niall unmute for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can add, if you want to talk, I can do that.
So was it women who doing the unwrapping?
No, it was, in the end, it was a different kind of group of quite a lot older men. I think maybe they just didn't care about seeming greedy. But I know that I, for one, am greedy. So I like to pretend as long as someone else opens it first, I'm like, oh, well, now the ball's in my court. And then the world's my oyster. But up until that point, I'm always like, I'll let someone else get the first dibs because, I want to clear up shop afterwards. It's I think it's less about for me it's less about the gender norms. Maybe I do think maybe for some men it is possibly linked to that, but for me it's more I have a never-ending appetite, an insatiable appetite, so I hold myself back and then let someone else get the first go in.
I hear you. Can I ask, Niall, if you ever see other people unwrapping the sandwiches as you did recently, is there part of you that looks at them and thinks a bit greedy?
No, I just wish it was me. I won't lie, but I do maybe think it's generational though, because as I say, I think what I've noticed at a lot of the wakes is that generally, because I've actually had I've been to 4 wakes in the last year and a half, and
Sorry.
it's fine. It isn't, well, it is what it is, really. That's life. But I've always noticed it's younger people who wait, and it's usually whether they're male or female, it's usually the older generation who open them first. So maybe it is just our generation, the little whippersnappers, just want to let that generation have their turn. If they've earned their retirement, then they've earned their food. So not that you lovely ladies are anywhere near to that, all being 21.
No, when it comes to food, I'm happy to be considered older if that helps me get more.
That gets me near the table.
Janet, can we unmute Janet,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah, I know from my own experience, it would definitely have been a generational thing. Like my eldest brother is 18 years older than me, so at home, my mom used to go, oh, to my sisters, oh, get up and get the ketchup there for your brother, and it was always my sisters and I that did the cleanup. My brothers didn't, even though some of my sisters would have been close in age to them. So they definitely grew up to be, oh well, no, the women would look after that. That they were raised that way. So that would be my take on it for I suppose my generation and above. I would expect older maybe. So no, hopefully I won't be introducing that with my children. They're all treated much the same. Yeah. Actually, it's probably the opposite here, because I've got my youngest is a daughter, so her 2 brothers are asked to do more than she is. Yeah.
Yeah. And Janet, I wonder, is that the Irish mammy? The Irish mammy with sons,
absolutely, yeah,
syndrome. Back in
yes,
that generation. Yeah.
absolutely. Shocking. Yeah.
And Michelle, I wonder what would happen if the women didn't step in and unwrap the sandwiches. Would some man at some stage finally step up?
I've tried this over the years, actually. This has been going on for a while, to my amusement. And it just takes longer. They do eventually think, oh, maybe somebody has to do something here. But yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe it's about practicality as well. I don't know.
Shyness, afraid of getting it wrong.
Yeah, the not wanting to seem greedy, like Niall said.
Yeah.
And if you've been raised that way, if you've been raised, don't touch that, the women do that, stay away, then you might think, okay, staying in my lane, I don't want to interfere. So I wonder how similar sorts of scenarios might play out in work-related matters. Now, are there ever situations where you perceive that maybe men are feeling like, oh, I really shouldn't touch that, or maybe it doesn't occur to them to, and women are taking on some responsibilities that they needn't take on? Did that question make sense?
I think in my experience, I mean, very back in the day when I first started, sometimes it was the ladies or the girls that did all of that, but these days it seems to be fairly equal sharing out. Years back, I'd get phone calls. I'd take phone calls from my boss, and then they'd assume that I was his secretary, and I'd just say, well, no, he hasn't got a secretary, and I think you need to email him or something. And that, I just dealt with it like that. But I don't really see that as much anymore. It seems to be much, much more equal to me in where I am.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it has equalized over the years. I had that in my first couple of months at Macro 4, that I answered the phone one day as, Macro 4 support, all very important. I was young then. And somebody at the other end of the phone said, oh, I didn't think Macro 4 had any women.
Oh, and I said, well, at least they didn't assume you were the secretary.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and that's certainly, I really don't think that would happen today.
Mm.
you know, for lots and lots of good reasons, I think. But yeah, it certainly threw me. I was like, oh, what am I supposed to say to that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's tricky because they're putting your sex, you being a woman, at the forefront.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, I try not to think of myself as a woman with a bunch of men. I try to think of myself as a team member because, you know, I'm no different from any of them. And so, you know, I can talk a bit about football and I can talk a bit about cricket and stuff, and I just join in, you know. So I think from the fact that I'm part of the team rather than a lady over there type of thing, I think sometimes you know, you have to sort of try and make yourself the team person.
Yeah, I do still find though that there is a certain element of, and I don't know if it's conscious bias or whatever, but women tend to be slightly more pushed towards the process related stuff. You know, to in terms of, you know, you design the way that we're going to do this. You do the you know, the sort of the admin type part of what's going on. And that's quite a hard nut to crack, because you get back the kind of, oh, but you're good at it and I'm not. And you're kind of going, yeah, I'm good at it because I learned how.
Yeah.
You
yeah,
could
only
have
one way
too.
to learn, guys. Come on.
Yeah. And you still get that a bit. And it does tend to be more aimed, it's not even aimed towards a mindset, because you very rarely see it aimed at men. It's very rarely the man driving the process or looking after the process. It's usually a woman. And I don't know why that is.
That's okay if you're inventing a process that you're going to own, so it's for your team kind of thing. So because that's kind of quite good, and then they say, okay, yeah, we'll do that, Michelle. You know, so that's sort of not too bad. But yeah, it wouldn't be because I guess a lot of women are often quite good at organizing, so and that's what it boils down to, really, doesn't it? Some of them are just not, but then some women are equally just can't organize themselves. So
yeah, I guess
there's something called weaponized incompetence, which is, I'm really bad at taking the bins out because I'm little and the bins are big. So I always get them in the wrong place and my housemate doesn't like it. So he finally says, just let me do it. And there's part of me that thinks, okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I've done that with the bins. Actually.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that deliberately, but if I were, the way that he does with doing dishes, it would be called weaponized incompetence. And sometimes there can be a bit of that going on in the workplace. And I'm not saying it's from men or from women. Everyone can play that game. But I wonder if I wonder how things would be if, when it comes to work that is a little less prominent, little less career boosting, I wonder what would happen if women did a bit more of weaponized incompetence, or the equivalent of standing on the other side of the room, not unwrapping the sandwiches and just, you know, I had a snack earlier, I can wait an hour. What do you think?
I think for me, I'd come from a different angle, and it would be more of, as you get almost the resistance or the standing back, it would be, well, let me show you how to do this. Here's an example of how to do this, and this is, you know, you say you can't do it, but actually it's really not that hard. So here's this that you can base it on, and there's that, and I'll talk you through it, and we'll meet and we'll discuss it. But I'm not going to do it for you. And that's always my stance. Even when it's sometimes, you know, you think, oh God, I could just do this in 2 seconds. And, you know, if you're up against it, sometimes you think, I just want to do it just to get it done quickly. But actually, then it doesn't take the problem away.
Yeah, I suppose there's a couple of elements there, because maybe we are playing to our strengths by taking on that whole process design, structure, organizational type role. But then you know, there's a side that says, well, are we enabling somebody else to do that if we're the ones always stepping up into that role, and never articulating that, look, I'd prefer to get more deep dive and dirty in some of this work rather than just the process stuff. So I suppose it is a case of sometimes having the courage over the comfort to actually state that that's what we want, and then to ensure that we get it in some shape or form, you know, from somebody who can provide that for us, you know. But I think it's also an age thing and a confidence thing. I think, you know, in my younger days, I probably wouldn't have challenged back around any of that stuff and be more, you know, would have been far more accepting of, well, this is your role in this, get on with it, as opposed to, you know, stating maybe, well, you know, I think I can add value in lots of different places here.
What do you think might have happened if you had stood up to it?
I think it definitely would have been a developmental process, Resley. Like, I suppose once you start stepping outside of your comfort areas, that's where the real growth happens, isn't it? So
absolutely.
And then it would have, you know, reinforced me, I suppose, as a powerful, capable woman in this industry. But not that I ever really had a sense of inadequacy when compared with the men in the job. I didn't really get that. I know we're still very much a male-dominated arena. I'm not really quite sure why that is still happening. Maybe it needs to start through the schools and through secondary, and you know, we kind of focus in when we're in school on the, you know, either the sciences or the arts or the business or the languages, but IT as a career for a woman doesn't really kind of enter the picture unless somebody is really, you know, into it themselves outside of what's happening within the school environment. So I suppose, Resley, would have been a lot of growth and development if you can articulate what it is you want out of something, you know, within the work environment. So, yeah.
I wonder too. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say that I think that for a lot of girls as they're growing up, if we were able to articulate a lot of the other roles that there are in IT, I think what they get is there's all this definition around you're going to be a coder, you're going to be a developer, this is what you're going to do, you're going to sit all day and you're going to write code. Whereas actually, I don't know whether any of us are doing that. I mean, that was my original degree, but I didn't do that after the first number of years. I haven't, you know, I might see a bit of code sometimes, but I'm not coding. And I think there's no recognition from the schools that there are a load of other careers in IT.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, kids start off in IT as doing, you know, coding, and it never becomes anything else other than coding. And there's a huge stereotype of geek factor that doesn't get lost. And then also when I look at what my children have been given, they're given gaming examples. Well, boys like gaming, but my girls don't like gaming. So, you know, the boys are in their element and the girls are going, well, I'd rather talk about fashion or, you know, something else, or you know, whatever it is that they like. So
if you ask them to make a gaming or a fashion app, you know, they'd be much more interested.
Absolutely. So, you know, I do think some of the issues stem right back to that point. But then if you look at television and if you look at films and everything, the computer person's the geek. The computer person's not the person who's going out and having fun and socializing. They're sat in front of in a darkened room. And, you know, but that's not my experience of IT. That's, you know, that's definitely not. I've had huge opportunities in IT of going off all over the place and doing stuff and, you know, IT stuff and more what you'd class as just non-IT, you know, conferences like this, you know, user groups, all sorts.
Mm.
Sorry.
Who's got the dog?
Better not be my house or my cat will be very upset.
I have 2 dogs here I'm fostering. I wonder too, I think it was, I'm not sure, I think it was you, Wendy, said something earlier about that sometimes it's better, even though it's quicker to just do it yourself, sometimes it's a better idea to solve the problem by saying, let me show you how, so that someone else can do the task. And 2 things. One is, Niall, I did see your comment in the chat. I'm not ignoring it. And the other is, I wonder if women, if somebody is doing a bit of the incompetence or, oh, you do it so much better. If we're the ones who take the time to teach him, is that in some ways the equivalent of us taking the wrapping off the sandwiches? Is it
No,
better
I think
for us
it
to do it,
allows
or would it be
people.
better to say to someone else, could you teach him, please? Or go to James, ask him, he'll teach you how.
Well, it's quite nice, I think, to have the opportunity to mentor someone, to say, have a go at it, and then I'll look at it, or whatever. And I think people like that, particularly as they're developing their career, because they get the opportunity to learn something that maybe they know they're not that good at initially.
Yeah.
So, and I think often women, maybe, you know, if they brought up children, you've had to coax the child to put on their shoes. So you're kind of maybe good at the coaxing.
And I
Yeah,
don't even
it's
say
interesting because there's no child who's been born without a father as well.
Yeah.
I know that not all fathers are around, but I'm thinking, aren't men good at coaxing? Many of them have children.
Some
Have
of
they
them
needed
are
to coax
excellent.
when they put
Yeah,
on their
yeah,
shoes?
yeah.
Well, I think I'm quite good at coaxing, and I don't have any children and never wanted any. So
Yeah, I'm the same. I'd be happy to be a father. I wouldn't want to be a mother. And we've
I
had
just don't want to
a
be a
lovely
parent.
comment. Sorry, you
I
didn't want to be a
just don't want to
parent.
be a parent. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
you know, having the dogs is enough. We have a lovely comment from Niall as well, saying that he's happy to challenge his own incompetence and see if he can do better than he thought with stuff like hoovering or ironing. Go, Niall. And he also sees weaponized incompetence coming from women, like oh, I can't possibly deal with this spider. Niall, you big brave man. And Niall is,
Yeah.
in his words,
Oh,
a
absolutely.
massive pansy. And so, yeah, I wonder how much we as women do that to men, do a bit of, oh, you know, we'll leave that task to the men to do. Where do you think we might do that in the workplace in particular? Or where have you seen women do that in the workplace?
If I'm perfectly honest, I don't see a lot of that in my workplace. We just get on and we all have our roles and we all muck in. So it maybe my workplace is different, but that's not something that I see. I don't see it being pushed to other people. And possibly that's because we're all generally very specialist in what we do. So we have our little areas and they cross over and we would learn from each other. But yeah, it's not something that I see.
I wonder, do you ever see it in the tasks that aren't the equivalent of emptying the dishwasher in the staff kitchen, but that are like a cross-party group is meeting and we need someone to chair it or be the leader? And do we ever look to the men in the group expecting them, or say, oh, you know, I'm not good at networking events, you go ahead, or oh, you know, you better do the presentation? I wonder if we ever do that, or if you see women doing that.
I actually
isn't
step
it-
in and go, oh, sorry.
Wendy.
I would always do that because I hate this kind of thing and giving presentations and speaking in public. And I've always put it back down to the fact that I'm dyslexic and I know you don't read when you're presenting, but the whole thing just in my head. So I would defer, but to be honest, I would defer to anybody else who wants to do it.
You will.
It doesn't have to be a man, but
Yeah.
they are more I think they are less likely to. I think it is their machismo. They can't say no, whereas women feel like we can, and it just, you know, because it's sort of I think it's harder for them to say no even when they want to. When it's sort of that kind of it's good for your profile.
Yeah.
A woman can step away from that easier than a man can when it's something you're not comfortable doing, because people let women escape, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
A man, it does a man a lot more harm to decide he doesn't want, you know, to say he doesn't want to do that career-wise than it would, I think, for a woman. And it is, it's the advantage of being the girl. You can escape doing some of these things that you're not comfortable with, which you probably should be doing because you're not comfortable with, and you'll get better at it if you do it. And I can see Aileen there, you know, telling me this. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we women, not just like us, but women, I wonder how much we give away our own power and opportunities by not having the courage to say, yes, I'm going to do it, and I might mess it up. And instead that it's easier to say, you know, oh, Niall, you big, strong man, could you get the spider out of the bath? And Niall, even though he's going, spider, he goes and does it. And whether we do that with stuff like presentations or managing the project or doing the pitch to the client.
Yeah, I've found myself in that situation, I think, Resley, and I think it's to do, just as we've been chatting there, I've been trying to figure out why that is. I think it's a seniority thing. I think I feel that the person I would be deferring to is, you know, a more senior, experienced, and maybe it's something to do with the fact that I was out of the arena for a long period of time, and then the whole confidence thing coming back in, you know, needed to grow as time went on. So I have found myself sort of, look, you take that meeting because these guys are really technically proficient in their area, and I won't have a clue what I'm talking about or saying to them or trying to, you know, run a session with them. So can you do it, please? And I've tended to hand off probably more than once around that kind of a situation, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not them taking over, it's us taking, you know, we take a step back. We kind of go, no.
Exactly.
I think it works quite well if you, because I had that fairly recently. We were doing a PR thing and there was another guy, but we did quite a lot of prep before it. And I think that certainly helps women. Because, well, for me, I think that because you like to be some way prepared with what you might want to say, and it kind of gets your thoughts in order, whereas I think often men are more willing to speak without thinking. And not worry about what it says. Whereas I think often women, we're worried, oh, I might sound a bit stupid, you know. So therefore, you know, that prep is more important maybe for us.
So I think something I learned a long time ago, you know, I've probably been in the business for about 8 or 10 years, and I felt like I should know some of the stuff, but there was other people around who'd got, you know, I didn't have a university background, so they got a degree in computing, they got this and they got that, and I felt that they'd always know more. And actually, once I stood up and, you know, I stepped back and I thought, I'm going to ask some of these questions. And I actually found that all the people in the room, male or female, were going, I'm really glad you asked that question, because I hadn't a clue what they were going on about. And it was a real eye-opener to me to say, I can ask these questions because actually probably other people don't know.
Yeah.
And it will just make it clearer to me.
Yeah, and I love too that you're the one who spoke earlier about if people are saying, but I don't know how to do that, that you are like, well, let me teach you and then you can do it for yourself. And I love that you're putting yourself forward for the learning by saying, I don't understand.
Yeah,
fits together.
I mean, it just puts it all together for me. And so if it puts it together for me, then I think there's other people who'll be asking that same question. So I'm not scared now of saying, I don't really know what you're talking about. Can you just explain that, please? Sometimes they might say to you, well, okay, let's go offline and I'll explain that to you. Or if they think the rest of the audience needs to know, then they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Do you think it's easier for women to say, I don't understand, please explain? Either easier for women to say it, or easier in the sense of they would have different repercussions from if a man said, I don't understand. What do you think?
Oh, it's a bit of a difficult one, isn't it? It's I think on one hand, men are less likely to say that they don't know what you're talking about, or what's being talked about, and very relieved when somebody asks, because they don't want to show that weakness. And I don't see it as a weakness in asking. I think it's a more of a getting clarity.
Right.
So,
I think there
Yeah.
there are a lot of women who would similarly be afraid of showing a weakness, of seeing
that-
it as showing a weakness,
that
because
for me, sorry.
no, just because sometimes people feel like they have to work harder to get to the same place, and therefore you cannot show any weakness.
Yes. And that's where I came from originally. It was like, I can't show them that I don't know. I've been in this bit doing this job for 8 years, and I should know that little bit. And actually, no, I
Mhm.
shouldn't have known that little bit. I just didn't know, and there's no harm in asking.
Mm.
Yeah, you get some of that with confidence I think it builds to a certain extent as you get older, where you're more confident that yes, I know this, I know how to do this job. I am skilled enough, or whatever you want, to be able to admit I don't know what you're talking about, because it becomes at a point where it's much more easy in your career to say I don't know what you're talking about, because I have the confidence in what I do know that I'm quite happy to tell you I have no idea.
So it's more
then
about
that's-
age and experience
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
gender, really. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's our job, to give the younger generation permission to ask those questions and to explore, I think.
Yeah, that's why I find teaching them face to face much easier, because they won't not necessarily ask a question, but you can tell by the look on their face.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can see
Confused.
them, you can tell it didn't land.
Yeah.
I mean, we do encourage, keep that curiosity, always be curious. So, there's no reason why anybody should be offended about anybody at any stage or of any age, of any gender, asking the clarification questions, Wendy, as you referred to, so yeah.
And is there I'm hearing a lot that sounds wonderful about, us developing the next generation and supporting other people in growing and developing. And what's going in the back of my mind is there's a fair bit of research showing that, as I say, that women will more often do the work that is not career progressing and that can be more background. That it's almost always a woman doing the collection and organizing the cakes for an event. And I wonder if the development aspect is part of that. Do you see men working as hard to develop the next generation as you see women working?
Yes, I do. Yeah. There are, dependent on your technical skills, will bring the younger ones up. It's becoming harder and harder when you're not face to face, is my biggest thing.
Yeah.
You don't want to do this on a Zoom for the whole of the day. It's just not fun. You can't walk to the coffee machine with them, as if, when we used to have coffee machines, and go and have a chat have a coffee and then go back to your desk. It's just a bit, it's a bit more full on, a bit harder. But I do see men. I do see men
They're even just
bringing up.
seeing out of the corner of your eye that this person is struggling, and you can't see that when they're in a different room.
No.
Yeah, we miss out on the informal comments. And speaking of comments, people who are attending the panel, anything you want to throw into the chat, do. We have a note from Claire saying, "You're excellent, Mary. Great presentation and meeting skills." Thanks,
I love
Claire.
you, Claire.
So I'm aware we just have about 15 minutes left. So I'm keeping an eye on any questions that come in. And I'd love to know from you panelists, if you could go back in time, what advice would you have given yourself at the beginning of your career in IT? And I realize that some of you have had, a couple of careers in IT, Mary, but what advice would you have given yourself back at the start?
I know one of the things for me coming back in, and it was majorly important, and somebody else referred to it earlier as well. It might have been you, Michelle. It was the idea of the mentor. And for me, that was almost a lifeline, to be honest. And it wasn't done on a formal mentoring program level. It was like just somebody that you engage with informally, and suddenly they become this mentor to you. And it was just so, I'm going to use the word comforting, because I suppose that's what it was at the time, just to have that person that you could go to, when you're feeling so new, like the old newbie. And I think that's what I would encourage anybody starting off, almost to buddy up with somebody, for that reason, and to, particularly, I suppose now when we're talking about, it's not face to face and it's very much isolating, that you have that, shoulder you can tap when you need to.
Lovely. Yes, get a mentor. There's plenty of research that absolutely supports what you're saying. How about others? Wendy,
I think that you have to sort of believe in yourself, so that you can sort of say, yes, I can do it. And then you can speak up, where I certainly think that I probably was quiet thinking, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And a bit out of your comfort zone kind of mentality. So you sort of sit back, and whereas maybe, if I was better at, and I notice this in my daughters as well, they sort of say, oh no, I'm not good at that, and I said, you're just as good as anybody else. Like, what experience do you think everybody else is coming out of university with that you don't have somehow? They're
nice.
And I think it's easy to sort of not believe in yourself when you're young, I think, to so that you don't have the courage to go put yourself forwards, really.
Yes, believe in yourself, have courage. Yeah, what else? Wendy, Claire, any thoughts?
I think it's having courage to say, and understanding that you may not know everything and you may not know things in details, but actually your view is valid. And we say it all the time. We need new blood in the industry. We need new ideas, and we may be stuck in our ways and do things in a particular way. And different people coming in with different ideas is really good. And challenging is really good. If it's done in a positive way, and asking questions is really good. Pick your moments. I mean, if you can see it's really not the moment to ask a question, hold it, write it down, and come back with it when it's a better time.
Good stuff. Anything else to add to the advice I would give myself at the beginning of my career?
You are driving your career, and it's up to you to drive it where you want. And your career doesn't have to be, there's a huge push for, you've got to be at the top, you've got to be at this level, you've got to be CEO or whoever it is, the very top. But if that's not where you want to go, don't be pushed towards it. You have the right to be able to say where you want to go and what you define as your success. I had in my head, I didn't want to be the high flying person who went all over the world and never saw her family. That was not me. You know, I didn't want to have a plethora of nannies or au pairs or whoever it was looking after my kids, you know. So I managed my career to the level that I felt was a success with my career and my family. I did what I wanted, so I wasn't pushed. You know, and so many people said go into management, and I was like, no, I want to be techie. I want to stay there, and I did that. So that's what you should be doing. You know, define your own success. What is where do you want to be? And your top might be somebody else's top.
Yeah, I think it's very important because there is such a push for this linear progression that you must want
Yes.
always to be going. You must want to be a manager. You must want to get to be the next level above that or whatever. There's no cognizance really given. Well, actually, you might want to go slightly sideways, or you might want to stop where you are and just become an expert at what you do.
Yes.
And that can be quite hard. And there are a lot of settings that just don't enable that as a career in the first place. I mean, one reason it ended up going into the whole contracting thing is because it allowed me to stay being a technical person with no pressure, nothing else to have to conform to this idea that you must want to advance, and people couldn't understand you if you didn't.
Yes.
In fact, they looked down on you.
Yes.
But when you became a consultant, it was acceptable.
Yeah.
Just the irony of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was somebody wanting to respond to that? I wasn't sure if there were people trying to get in. Okay. Let me ask you, what sticks out for you most about this conversation that we've been having?
If I'm very honest, I thought I'd feel intimidated by everybody else who, in my words, I felt had gone to the top when I hadn't got there. I mean, I have in my book, but for, you know, that may be viewed as, well, she just stayed techie and she didn't get to the top, did she? So that was how I was feeling, and I don't feel intimidated at all. I don't feel, you know, I think hopefully people can see they can do lots of things.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that so often we can feel intimidated, but actually we're intimidating ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But
years ago, was it? Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, but even since when you're saying when you didn't want to, Wendy, that you wanted to have your time for your family, so this is where you chose for your career to go and not beyond that point. But I say, I don't have a family. I didn't want a family, and that's still the point where I decided I didn't want that's where I wanted to stop. You don't. I really think we have, as a society, we have to move away from this idea that you always have to want something more. I'm happy with what I have, thanks.
Yeah,
and that's not. It's not giving up.
We need to recognize that something more might be something different. It could be as easy as that. I mean, we have a guy who was in development, actually, and he moved into a technical sales, like a pre-sales role. So he's not doing development at all anymore. And he is perfectly happy. It's not something that had really occurred to him. But, you know, so it is a bit like you said, the sideways step. But he loves it, you know, and so there's nothing at all wrong with that. You know, and it could be a total change of career. I mean, people are saying, you know, the younger generations will have to work longer. So it's going to be accepted that people would have multiple careers, not just one, which we were kind of brought up, I guess, with this idea that we would start in a career and you'd build up towards to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Permanent, quite boring, really, isn't it? You know, and that's certainly not what our children are going to have, or the younger people coming through.
I love it. I was thinking with the how we intimidate ourselves theme. Many years ago, I was speaking at an IBM conference. Went into the lunchroom, and it was sort of cafeteria style, and then you just chose a table, and it took me right back to, I grew up in America, to American high school days. You go into the lunchroom and sort of where do I sit? Everyone else knows everyone. And I didn't know what to do. And I just went and asked some people, oh, may I sit at this table, please? And they said yes. And it's interesting because the reason I chose them, I noticed that there were a lot of tables with some quite handsome young men. And I was tempted to go to one of those, but instead I sat at the table with all the older people. And I asked, it turned out that these older people, once I was able to see their name tags, were some of the most senior staff in IBM.
Cool.
I know. And I'm like, and I thought, networking opportunity. And I said, why isn't everyone elbowing to sit at the table with you? And they said, well, they're all intimidated by us. But, we're just, eating lunch. And I wonder how much we intimidate ourselves and maybe even think, oh, but these are the people, the ones who know everything. And then eventually we come along and maybe kind of like you, Wendy, thinking that you might be intimidated by all of us, realize, oh, they are human and people and fallible and
we have a lot in common, really. I mean, that's the standouts from the session, really. The commonality across all of us, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I included in that the attendees.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm aware of the time. I'm also aware that I could hang out with you all day. It's really interesting. And I've jotted down a few notes of some of the things that you've said. Get a mentor, and it's okay to be happy with what you have. Believe in yourself. You're as good as everyone else. Challenge, ask questions, put yourself forward. It's okay not to know anything. Your view is still valid. And define your own success. You are driving your career. That's just some of the gems that have come out of this. And also where we started off with the sandwiches, when we may be doing the equivalent of unwrapping the sandwiches, and also the understanding of when we may be doing the equivalent of, oh, you're a man, could you get the spider out of the bath? And that maybe men want more opportunity to say, you know what, I'm really scared of spiders. I don't want to do this. Go give the big presentation to the client. And for not to do this sort of, oh, I'm scared, but to go for it. Any final thoughts you'd like to add?
I just think don't be scared. Just, it's a career. It's not a fight. It's just, show yourself, show your skills, work hard and play hard, and just make the most of all the skills that you've got around you, because there's huge amounts of skills if you go and ask.
I think as well, going back to the mentoring, as people like us are sort of approaching maybe retirement, or other people who are older sort of retiring, they're so keen to pass on their skills that there's an ideal opportunity for the new people coming in. Not only are there roles that are sort of lucrative for people, but I think there's people there who want to transfer on their knowledge.
Yes.
Just hand it over, really, because they like their job. And they want somebody else. They want a kind of a legacy, maybe. Not, it sounds a bit grand, but that is kind
Why
of.
not?
You want to hand over your baby a little bit, to say this is what I built, so I'd like somebody to take care of it.
Yes.
So I think that's where a lot of people in the mainframe, in particular, are, that they want to do that.
So we need to wrap up here. We do have a QR code for this session, which Aileen will be sharing with you. Is that what's in the chat?
Actually, what I've just put in the chat is the link, so that people can click on the link. They can also get through to their BYOA through the agenda. So we don't actually need to do the screen sharing.
Yes. So could you please all make sure that you do the feedback? We would love to hear what you think. Just be straight and honest about it. And the more that you can put in terms of comments and text, instead of just clicking buttons, that's even juicier.
The more
I
information
hope
you give us, the better.
I hope that you've enjoyed this as much as I have. It's been great to be with all these high-powered folks and fascinating people and attendees and panelists. Love you, and we have a note. Thank you for such a fascinating session. So,
Okay.
I want to say thank you, Wesley, for facilitating this. I knew you would do a phenomenal job, and you did. The spider
It's a
made me
joy.
laugh because my younger sister has a phobia of spiders and was so bad. There was a spider in the bathroom one day that, now her husband is really, really tall and really big, and he deals with them no problem. And if he's not there, usually I'm around, so I deal with them. But she was so bad that she went out screaming. The child from next door, who was about 6 at the time, had to come in and deal with the spider with her because she could not cope. And now I think it was the little girl
You need
next
to
door
watch
couldn't
this panel
stand it, was it?
recording.
But look, she's a win. She's used to these things. But I do want to say thank you so much to our speakers today. It was really, really good for your contributions. Thank you to Wesley. Thank you to the participants. Please remember the feedback. I think I've said it 10 times already, and Wesley said it a few times too. So feedback is really, really important. There's some other phenomenally good sessions, technical and non-technical, over the next couple of days. I'm not sure. Have you any more sessions, Wesley?
No.
Okay. Well, then everyone really, really needs to go to the session at 12 o'clock on Thursday. So it's 12 o'clock on Thursday, where Michelle is giving her session with Dolly Poppet virtually on women in the mainframe. Yes, we exist and we are thriving. And I think this session proved that. So thank you very much.
I want to go to that.
It'd be really
Okay,
good.
thank you. And thank you to Aileen, and thank you to Megan. I appreciate
thank you,
it all.
Megan.
Thank you, Megan.